Good morning, everyone. We're going to go ahead and get started. We have a full agenda today and a number of guests. So thanks for joining us. Good morning. I'm Liza Fleming-Ives with the Genesis Fund and chair of the MAHC board. And thank you so much for joining us today. We have over 110 participants that we're expecting on this call. And I wanted to just share a few notes about the call. All participants are in listen only mode. And so if you're signed in, good morning, Speaker Gideon. We're just welcoming everyone right now. So we'll be with you in just a moment.
Thank you so much. Sorry for being a couple of moments late.
No problem at all. I'm just letting folks know we're on the Zoom platform today. So we've got everyone is in listen only mode and folks joining on their computers have their video turned off. And we're not using the chat feature today, but we do encourage questions and comments. And so please go ahead and use the Q&A feature on the Zoom toolbar for asking questions, and we'll take them throughout the meeting this morning. So this webinar is being recorded, and we will make a copy of that available to everyone after the meeting. And we're going to start this morning with a conversation with Sarah Gideon, Speaker of the Maine House of Representatives and Democratic candidate for U.S. Senate. We're so thrilled that you're here to join us. And then after that, we're going to talk about several MAHC projects and some policy issues that we're working on. And then at around 9:40 this morning, Secretary of State Matthew Dunlap is going to join us. And he, along with Joey Lindstrom from the National Low Income Housing Coalition, are going to talk about voting. So we are going to jump right in, and I'm just going to bring a couple of other folks up on the screen. Greg Payne, Director of MAHC, and Amy Cullen, who's a MAHC board member and also with the Zanton Company. And Speaker Gideon, we're thrilled to have you join us, and thank you so much. We know your schedule is so busy, and we just are really appreciative for all that you have done in your time in the Maine legislature to support housing issues, and especially around the passage most recently of the new state affordable housing tax credit. And we wanted to just start this morning by giving you a chance to speak to this group. MAHC, as you know, is a membership organization with over 130 members, a diverse group of folks. We have contractors and design professionals, affordable housing developers and lenders, and so we all work to create and preserve affordable housing for the benefit of Maine people, and we're excited to hear from you this morning.
Thank you so much, Liza. I appreciate it, and thank you all for welcoming me today. But most importantly, I want to just pause for a moment right here at the beginning and thank you for the work that you all do. You stand up and make sure that your ideas and your voices are heard, and you help make sure that the policy making happens in order for you to be able to create safe and affordable housing for people in Maine and to be an example across the country. So I'm really, really thrilled to have this time with you today, and thought I would just share a little bit about both myself and my experience with you working at the state level, but then look forward to hearing from you because for me, this is really an opportunity to learn and to learn how I can be the most effective advocate and partner for you on the federal level as well. So I know Maine Affordable Housing Coalition, or MAHC, you have all been incredibly powerful advocates for affordable housing in our state. And I know that, of course, because I've been able to see it firsthand. It's been my privilege to be your partner through the past 8 years in the State House. And I feel like we have been able to inch closer and closer to fulfilling what I think your mission is of making sure that every Mainer has access to safe and stable housing. Now, of course, here we are in 2020, finding ourselves in such a deeply challenging time. And I think we all recognize that the coronavirus pandemic has really laid bare the inequities that already existed among us, but also exacerbated them. There are people who have never before struggled with housing who are now facing unemployment and bills that are piling up and unpaid rent. And it's a crisis that hits us here at home as well, as we saw just a couple of weeks ago with recent protests and demonstrations in Portland in front of City Hall. But I do just want to be clear that I think and know, and I know you know this, that access to housing, even pre-pandemic, was an issue that's absolutely central to every person's ability to even be stable in their lives, no matter successful and in charge of their own destiny. And this is something that, you know, when we step outside of just talking about issues around housing specifically, when we talk about issues related to poverty, when we talk about issues related to lifelong success of children as they go through school, are able to learn and grow older, as we even think about people who are in the recovery community, who are seeking to make sure that they are able to stay in recovery when they have substance use disorder. None of these things can happen if people don't have stable housing to begin with. So I'm grateful for all of those reasons to be here talking with you about this issue and looking forward to learning more from you today. Backing up just a little bit, I know that some of us have met before, but some of us have not, so I thought I'd just introduce myself also. My name is Sarah Gideon, and I live in Freeport. I'm tuning into from my home today, where I live with my husband, Ben, and our 3 kids, Julian, Alec, and Josie. Here in Freeport, Pownell, and Durham. Kids are starting to go back to school today. I know that is different depending where we live in the state and what district we're in. But for the past 7 years, finishing 8 years actually now, I've served in the Maine state legislature. I've represented the towns of Freeport and Pownell as a state rep, but I have also served in a leadership role as well, both as assistant leader and then for 2 terms as Speaker of the House. And now I am about 56 days away from Election Day as I run to represent us in the US Senate. And of course, as you probably know, I am running against Susan Collins, who has been in the Senate for 24 years. So I want to briefly just share how I got here, because I did not have a plan to run for elected office. I think that is true for many of us. And as I think about many of you who I know who are on the call today, I think we have often found ourselves stepping into roles that we didn't necessarily plan on. For me, many years ago, I came home one day and I found that someone had left a message asking if my husband, Ben, would consider running for our local town council. And when I heard that message, I decided instead that that was a job for me. And so I did serve on that most local level as a Freeport town councilor before becoming a state representative and now running for US Senate. And I'm so grateful for that experience, because one thing that I have learned along the way is that when you are able to understand how every level of government functions, and particular to your industry of building affordable housing, being able to work first on the most local level with entities like Freeport Housing Trust, and then being able to work on the state level with all of you just gives me that understanding of how we need to be working towards creating affordable housing from every aspect and every level of government. Now, in terms of the work that we've done together in the State House, it has been my honor to work with you and to learn from you and to partner with you in these things, and to be successful really because of the advocacy and the work that all of you put in. I can picture days at the State House where you came to lobby Republicans, Democrats, and independents. I can think about the ways in which you were educating legislators who were not as familiar with your issues. And the fact that as an organization, MAHC is able to pull together so many different groups of people who work with a common goal. Now, we've been able to do incredible things because of you. We've put into place a law, as Liza mentioned, expanding access to affordable housing by doubling the rate of new affordable housing creation, creating the Maine Affordable Housing Tax Credit, and having really specific goals about the number of affordable housing units that we could make, or create rather, but also thinking about the senior housing bond that we were able to pass, and also such important basic, what I think of as foundational issues, like making sure that we would have proper testing for lead in our apartments, and making sure that families can grow up healthy and well for the best of their abilities. One other thing I just want to mention, because I think it's really, really important in all of our days, but especially in these days of COVID-19, as people are struggling to pay their bills, we were also able to put together a package of property tax relief bills. And I will just share with you anecdotally that whether it's been as speaker or also in this race for Senate, what I still continue to hear from people over and over is that property taxes are such a tremendous burden and such a cause of worry for people, especially as they age and think about how they're going to be able to stay in their homes. So I look at what's being done right now in Washington, or sometimes, as I say, what's not being done, and I think I know that we can do better. I know that we can make sure that we are standing up for people, making sure that we're working together and doing some of the great work that you do every day, which I think is truly an example of bipartisanship. At least that's what we've seen here in Maine. I know that we're going to talk a little bit more, and you're going to share more with me very specifically about the low-income housing tax credit on the federal level. I look forward to hearing about that from you, and just want to assure you that moving forward, making sure that I am hearing the voices of you as MAHC today, but also tomorrow, understanding the way that as developers and investors and nonprofit leaders and housing advocates, and that you are all working together, it is really an inspiration for me of how we can come together and get things done. But maybe most importantly, as we think about how we continue to make our way through this pandemic, that we are going to have to find new ways of doing things, but also make sure that we identify what has worked and how we make that stronger. And I think that LIHTC is probably one of the key examples of that. So I thank you all again for welcoming me here today. I really look forward to the next couple of portions of our time together, both hearing from you and also answering questions, and maybe being able to ask questions of you as well that come from those conversations. Thank you so much, everyone.
Great, thank you, Speaker Gideon, and again, so appreciative of all of the ways that you've supported initiatives that we've worked on over the past several years, especially. And so today, as you mentioned, we as you seek to represent the people of Maine and Washington, we wanted to help you understand some of the issues that we're working on at the federal level. And Greg is going to talk briefly right now about, you know, some of the issues we're seeing needing to be addressed most immediately. Greg?
Yes. Good morning, Speaker Gideon. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. I know you have a few things going on. And thank you so much for your partnership over the years. It's been really great working with you on so many different issues over the past, you know, several sessions. And so as Liza said, there's sort of some immediate short-term issues we're working on now that have a tie-in with federal policy, and longer-term issues too. And so I'm just going to take 2 to 3 minutes to kind of help you understand the short-term issues we're really focused on right now that may end up being, I expect probably still would be at issue if you are the next U.S. Senator from Maine and working on federal policy in from that capacity. You probably are aware that one of the groups most profoundly impacted by the economic fallout of the pandemic are working renter households. So we're talking about renters who don't have rental assistance, and so their rent doesn't get adjusted as their income goes down, which is what's happened for a lot of these folks. The rent is what the rent is, and they still have to pay it, even though they've lost hours and they've lost income. And, you know, I think the overall narrative, I'd say, that we're understanding from folks is that they have found a way, largely, to pay the rent to date. that there's not the kind of huge numbers of renter households who have fallen behind. It's happened some, certainly, but maybe not as much as some of us would have expected. The issue, though, is the struggles that people are having in paying their rent and the way they're paying their rent. That's creating some real problems. And we want to talk to you about that. I'm going to share with you a couple of visuals that can just help make this a little more clear. What I'm showing you now is information about rent receipts at Avesta Housing, and specifically the households, about 650 or so households in the roughly 80 or so properties that Avesta manages. And this is just an example because I have it easily available to me. But these are specifically the 650 or so households who have earned income and no rental assistance. And what you can see here as you look at these blue bars, and that represents the percentage of those working renter households that were able to pay their rent in the first half of the month in 2019, and the gray bar is in 2020. And you can see that in the first half of the month, folks have struggled to pay the rent on time, more so than we would expect based on last year's numbers. And on average, about 6% lower. And then you can see in the bottom graphic, again, it's the same household. It's that the bottom graphic is just looking by the end of the month. And you can see people have been able largely to make up some ground. So rather than on average being behind 2019 by 6%, people are behind by more like 3.5%. And so, that is obviously still in the context of things, being behind by only 3.5%, in terms of households by the end of the month is frankly a little bit better than I think a lot of us feared when everything came kind of crashing down. Folks have found a way. Now, the other graphic I just want to show you right now is information. So what happened is we were seeing these rent receipts, and Avesta's experience is quite similar to Amy's and I think other affordable and market landlords around the state. And that is that largely the rent has come in, more so than I think most of us would have expected. But as May turned to June and we saw rent receipts kind of keep up better than we thought, we realized, well, maybe we need to talk to the tenants themselves to understand what's going on here, because there's probably more than meets the eye. And so what we did is, starting in June, we have been interviewing working renter households around the state and asking them, did you pay your rent? And if so, how did you pay your rent? And has that created any issues? And so what I'm showing you now is summaries from August. And it was about 61 households around the state in 20 different cities around the state that we interviewed. And as you can see here from these interviews, half of them are reporting lower earned income than when the pandemic started. But 88% of them report that they were able to pay their July rent in full. And as we talk about how, they report that while they use the earned income they do have left and fixed income payments that they might have, unemployment benefits is now shrinking as one of the sources that folks are using, but still about 23% reported they were paying that way. You start to get into some of the more difficult stuff after that, and people taking out loans and instead using credit cards and depleting savings accounts in order to pay the rent. 25% of these interviewees report that they're skipping bills in order to keep up with the rent. That the rent eats first, and that's what a lot of people are reporting. There's 31% of these households say they needed food assistance in order to reduce their grocery bill so they could pay the rent. And over these 3 months that these interviews have been happening, it's been a very similar theme and a lot of stress and a lot of anxiety. And certainly now, more and more people saying that they have depleted their savings accounts, and they started with a little nest egg, and now that nest egg is next to nothing. And yet the labor market is still probably going to be struggling for quite some time. And so that is sort of the big picture that we're struggling with right now. Now, the governor has deployed some funds, as you know, some state real estate transfer tax funds, as well as some CARES Act funding to help make sure that people can pay their rent. But those programs have sort of started and stopped, and the rules have changed. There's a great deal of confusion. A lot of people haven't gotten the help that they need and are instead skipping bills and depleting their savings account, which is unfortunate and something that we hope to work on in the months ahead.
Mm-hmm.
But just kind of at the end here, kind of linking it in with what's happening at the federal level, you're probably aware that last week the federal CDC surprised most all of us by, with this national eviction moratorium,
Mm-hmm.
which was a great relief, I'm sure, for a lot of renters and took a load off. But that eviction moratorium did not come with rental assistance, and the rent is still due. That moratorium goes through December 31st. And so while tenants get the relief of knowing for a few months they can't be put out for non-payment of rent due to a COVID impact, the rent is still due. They do have to pay it. And if they don't have the earned income to do it and they've depleted all their savings, that obviously portends some real problems going forward when December 31st comes. Now, the House passed a $100 billion rental assistance relief piece of the HEROES Act, and the Senate has yet to act on that at all. This is kind of, I think, our #1 priority right now as folks struggle, and we need to make sure folks, now that they're not going to get evicted for a few months, that's great, but we want to make sure folks don't fall way behind, have huge debts that they have with their landlords, and frankly, that landlords have the money they need to pay their mortgages and to pay their staff and to pay their taxes and all their other expenses. So, big picture, I think an eviction moratorium, while helpful, is only half the solution. And as long as this labor market stays soft, especially for low-income renters, we're going to need rental assistance. And it may very well be that, if you're to take office in January, this could very well be remaining as a highly prominent issue that needs work. So I'll stop there. But I just wanted to kind of give you some orientation to the kind of short-term issues that we're really focused on.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for that. Just a question for you. I know there are some different proposals out there in the Senate right now. Do any of the proposals that are floating around the Senate include rental assistance in them?
Not that I've heard. I think that there are certainly some senators who have said to the press that they're open to rental assistance. Mm-hmm. But there's been these little packages that have seemed to get floated out every once in a while that maybe make reference to state and local government, or maybe make reference to a stimulus check. In those specific ideas, which at least to me, there's fairly limited reporting on what's in them. I'm not understanding any of them at this point to include rental assistance, though clearly there's a majority of the US Senate that embraces that because the Democratic caucus is so strongly behind it. Mm-hmm. And there are certainly some Republican senators who have indicated their support as well.
Yeah, okay. Thank you.
Yes.
Speaker Gideon, in our final minutes with you, we wanted to ask Amy Cullen also to speak to kind of the longer term sort of strategy and sort of resources that are needed to address the affordable housing issue, including the supply of affordable housing. And so Amy's just going to share a bit about that.
Good morning, Speaker Gideon. Thank you so much for being here today. As Liza said, my name is Amy Cullen. I work at the Zanton Company. We're a for-profit, impact-driven, mixed-income and affordable housing developer in Portland. Back maybe about 10 years ago, the Maine Affordable Housing Coalition did a study on housing needs in Maine. And at that time, it was, the affordable housing need was about somewhere between 15,000 and 20,000 units needed. And as a goal, Maine Housing kind of put out, the goal is 1,000 units per year to develop. And I'll just share kind of an infographic here. Mm-hmm. So you can see at the top, the target, And what we've been producing yearly, 2020 is through the second quarter. I think by the end of 2020, we'll reach the 2019 level, maybe the 2018 level, or 2017 level. So, you know, we're averaging maybe 220 units a year. So we're barely making a dent in ongoing need, let alone, you know, backlog of need. And, you know, the main driver of financing for these projects is the low-income housing tax credit. And as you probably know, there are kind of two flavors of tax credits. There's a 4% program and the 9% program. Several years ago, Congress fixed the 9% rate because they used to both fluctuate. So they fixed it at 9%. But no fix has been made for the 4% program. So that fluctuates, you know, on a monthly basis. This month it is 3.07%. You know, as we all do in the affordable housing industry, we layer complex financing together to make deals work. You know, low-income housing tax credits, home funds, CDBG, affordable housing program grants, local home, tax increment financing. We kind of cobble, you know, this, you know, alphabet soup of acronyms together to make an affordable housing project come together. And the rate would, you know, it doesn't feel like a lot, 4% versus 3.07. But to give you an idea of the value that this would create for Maine, fixing the 4% rate, we're right now working on a project in pre-development, trying to make it work under the 4% program. It's a 55 unit, age-restricted property. The difference between 3.07% and 4% for this project would raise about $1 million extra in equity. So that's the difference in terms of dollars. If there were 4 to 6 similar size deals in any given year, I think it's safe to say it would mean an additional $4 to $6 million annually for the state of Maine. And, you know, coupled that, leveraged with the new affordable housing credit on the state side, we're looking at an additional 25 to 50 units a year, which, you know, it helps the production. So thanks, you know, thanks for listening to us. I'd be happy to answer any questions about that or any other affordable housing question now or at a later time.
Great, thank you so much, Amy. Well, I do have a question, just, I don't know if anyone's able to answer this, but when the 9% became fixed, but the 4% did not, what was the reasoning behind that?
You know, my sense is that it was purely money, that it, you know, both those things cost some money. And at the time the 9% fix was done, I think appropriators just didn't feel like they had the dollars to spend. I do think that one of the things that's changed since then, though, too, is that the 4% rate has plummeted. And, you know, that rate is tied to the Fed borrowing rate. And so, I'm sorry, the Fed lending rate. And so, you know, what used to be 3.4%, you know, going down to 3% makes a big difference. And so I think it was about money at the time, but now that the problem has gotten that much worse, there's a lot more attention on it. And just so you know, this is something that has bipartisan support, fixing this rate. Honestly, it just seems like something that's gotten lost in the shuffle, that there hasn't been Senate action taken, even though on both sides of the aisle, I think they get it. It would make our state tax credit 25% stronger. And so we do hope that if it doesn't get handled, maybe in a relief package or in the lame duck session, we hope that this is something that Congress will fix quickly in the new Congress starting in January. It is a really top tier issue in terms of increasing production of affordable housing.
Yep, absolutely. I can see that and understand it. And so basically making that a fixed 4% rate and making sure that there are the funding streams behind it is probably top priority, as well as having that rental assistance available, particularly as we think about the December 31st expiration date on moratoriums. Can I just go back? I want to circle back and ask you a question, because you mentioned, Greg, this was when you were speaking, you mentioned, you know, the help that exists right now in terms of the moratorium on evictions for renters, but thinking about the landlords, just what sort of situation does that put landlords in this, you know, September to end of 2020 timeframe, and how are landlords able to deal with that in the absence of rental assistance?
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's a bit of a complex picture. I think for some landlords, they're able to take advantage of forbearance programs that are in place right now, and so some are getting help that way. Again, as I said, most renters have kept up. Like, there certainly is a drop off, but not as much as we would have feared. And so I think for a lot of landlords, they would say, well, you know, we've taken a hit a little bit in terms of our income in order to pay our expenses, but it hasn't been that bad yet. I think that what landlords read out of what happened last week was very much the fact that there's a two-part solution here and only one part was taken care of. And I think it's, as we move into these fall months, and there's so much concern over what happens, does the virus get worse? You know, do we end up, you know, having to shut down pieces of the economy again? Does the economy have more fallout? And thus, do renters have even a harder time paying? And now their savings are gone. They've been clawing their way through it to date, but how long can they hang on? I think it's for landlords looking into those future months where they see, okay, our tenants are safe. You know, landlords, I'm sure, by and large, are very happy about that. But in the absence of similar federal action, also making sure that the rent can actually get paid, I think they're probably feeling a little bit forgotten in the mix, and why I think landlords are so focused on helping to get rental assistance included in this congressional relief package.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And you just hit on what I was thinking as I was picturing what you shared from those interviews with people about going through their savings, about putting other things, you know, on credit cards in order to pay their rent. There's a point at which people don't have anything left. And then other expenses start to be incurred, for example, heating costs, which were absent as people were paying their rent in June, July, and August, right? So there'll be this tightening.
That is totally true. And, you know, I think the most common bill people are citing as they're skipping was their electric bill. And, you know, we did reach out to CMP and say, are you seeing this too? And they said that actually there is the past due balance that folks owe is increased by 50% from this time last year, which is an enormous number. It doesn't usually, you know, go up and down that much. But you're right, as heating bills kind of enter into it, and, you know, the CMP moratorium on collecting or on disconnecting accounts, you know, is up for discussion right now. I think the PUC is now weighing removing that moratorium on disconnecting electric power. And so as that decision gets made, that's going to have some real implications for people being able to kind of do this robbing Peter to pay Paul thing to get through each.
Absolutely. Greg, thank you. I can see that the Secretary of State has joined us because I think I'm over time a little bit here. So I want to be mindful of your agenda. And also need to get onto something else. But I want to say thank you again for having me today. I feel like in some ways we barely scratched the surface probably about the discussions that we need to have. And so what I want to say to all of you is please let this be, I would say a beginning conversation, but of course we have been talking along the way, both in the State House and even in other conversations for Need to Learn. But I want to recognize that should I become our senator after November 3rd, that this is just the beginning of our conversation and work together, and that in the same way that I have been a partner to you in the State House, I will seek to be that same partner in the Senate as well. And really just want to emphasize my fundamental belief, which I think is so in tune with yours, is that housing is really as the base and the foundation of what people need in order to be healthy and successful, in order to raise their families, to be able to go to work every day. And we need to prioritize affordable housing here in Maine and in this country. So thank you so much for the work you do, and take care of yourselves.
Thank you so much, Speaker Gideon. Yes, we really appreciate your being so generous with your time today. For folks who are participating in the meeting today, there are a few questions that we will go ahead and follow up on and pass along to your campaign, and look forward to future conversations. So thank you very much.
Thanks.
Okay.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
And welcome, Secretary Dunlap. Thank you for joining us.
Well, thank you. I had planned on doing this from my office, but I walked out of my house this morning and discovered something of a flat tire, so.
Okay. Well, great. Well, we were just wrapping up the conversation with Speaker Gideon, and we are just about to hear an update on a Maine Affordable Housing Coalition project that we've been working on. So we're going to shift to that part of our agenda right now, and then we look forward to hearing from you in just a few minutes.
Okay, very good.
Great. So I am going to shift to invite Effie Rourke to come onto the screen here. And Effie has been working for the last several years as a consultant to MAHC, as our key point person for our Maine Together collaboration, and now on the new tenant interview project that Greg shared some information about just earlier. So we wanted to have Effie join us today to just share an update on the most recent data that she's been collecting as we talk to earned income tenants about kind of how they're making ends meet right now. So welcome, Effie. Thanks.
Hi, I'm going to do a quick update on the project that Greg mentioned, and do a little bit more of an in-depth kind of dive into what the project is and how we're doing it. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here. So as Greg mentioned, we've been doing these interviews starting in June with renter households across Maine, and we're planning on talking to these households once a month for the next year or so. We're around 75 households plus or minus, because we're still actively recruiting tenants, which I'll get to at the end. Households are being compensated for their time, since we're asking them to talk to me every single month for 12 months. So they're getting grocery gift cards, and thankfully Hannaford donated a significant portion of those. And then we also are working with Shaw's as well. As Greg mentioned, all of the households in our interview project rely, at least in part, on earned income, or have relied on earned income in the recent months. Some of them are in between jobs or relying on unemployment currently, but earned income is a key part of every budget in the project. And then you can see here we have a pretty good cross-section of communities across Maine who have people participating in this project. Quick thank you to the landlords and property companies that have helped recruit residents for this project, including Auburn Housing, Avesta Housing, Bath Housing, CNC Realty, Lewiston Housing, Penquist, Saco Falls Management, and Volunteers of America. We are still, as I mentioned, looking for some more residents to include. So if you're interested in maybe participating, we'll have you get in touch with Greg. So some of the themes, Greg sent out the summary for August, because the interview results are changing a little bit from month to month. As I mentioned, we started in June, and we just wrapped up our August interviews, and people's situations obviously are changing over time. So that's why we're talking to them over the course of a year, to see how families are recovering or not from the economic downturn that we're seeing. So as Greg mentioned, people are largely paying their rent, but in lots of problematic ways that are not necessarily sustainable. They're shifting expenses to credit cards or going into debt by taking out loans, informally borrowing money from family and friends. Many of them have reported that if they had savings, it is now gone or nearly gone. And then lots of people are reporting that they're skipping bills, juggling bills, and cutting expenses back wherever they can, which is usually groceries, car repairs, things like that. When we started this project, seniors initially reported being more financially secure because many of them have supplemental income like Social Security or retirement. But now that the summer has gone on, a lot of those seniors feel like they're facing a forced retirement. They want to go back to work. Many of them need the additional money from working, but they're too scared to go back to work because of exposure to COVID. And in some cases, their doctors are advising them not to go back to work. So I've definitely seen the level of anxiety among the older people in the interview project get higher and higher as these months have gone on. People are confused about where to turn for help. They're confused about if help is available at all. Many of them are getting frustrated about unclear and confusing answers and starting to give up on finding help. Or they're cobbling together everything they can to pay their rent and then either being told that, well, your rent's paid, you don't need help anymore. And then, they're finding themselves with nothing left in their bank account. Quite a few participants have reported being told that they're ineligible for various rental assistance programs, or they're getting different answers depending on who they talk to. So there's definitely a widespread sense of high anxiety, kind of high panic about how they're going to pay their rent in the coming months, but also a lot of confusion about where they're supposed to turn for help. One theme that we've seen throughout the first 3 months of this project is that families with kids are especially stressed. As many of you on this call probably have kids and are in that boat too. The difference is that the families in this interview project, many of them have had to choose one of the parents to quit their job and stay home with the kids. The vast majority of renter households that we're talking to do not have jobs that allow them to work from home. So they've had to choose somebody to quit their job and stay home. So they're having a lot of stress because the kids are home now, they're eating a lot. That's something that I hear parents say over and over again, is that I have to provide food for my kids all day, every day now, at the same time that they have lost one of the jobs of the house. Several of those households also have reported that they are eager to get back to work. They could be back at work, but they don't have any childcare options. So they sort of feel stuck that somebody has to be taking care of the kids, and it's significantly impacted their household income. Last but not least, like I mentioned, we are still actively looking for a few more folks to include in this project. So if you have residents or people that you think would be interested in participating, please go ahead and get in touch with Greg. And then also want to just give a quick thank you to the national funders who are funding this National Low Income Housing Coalition. As I mentioned, Hannaford's has donated quite a few gift cards, TD Bank, and NeighborWorks America. So with there, I'm going to stop sharing my screen and turn it over to Greg and Liza if anybody has additional questions about our interview project.
Thanks, Effie. Great. Greg, did you want to jump in with any additional updates before we shift to conversation about voting?
No, I know in terms of time, we probably need to move on. I do want to acknowledge, Effie is literally interviewing now 60-something people every month. It'll go up some starting in September, and it's. I think though that the product of those interviews has yielded information we just aren't seeing anywhere else. And so I too want to thank the organizations that have helped us find the tenants to talk to. Without this, we'd just be looking at rent receipt data and have no sense for what's really behind that. So thank you, Effie, for all the work you're doing and for that report.
Great. So we're pleased to shift now in our agenda to a conversation about voting and this fall's election. And we have two guests with us. One, Secretary of State Matthew Dunlap, who has served in his role most recently since 2013 and has been a really important national voice on voting rights. And we also then following have Joey Lindstrom from the National Low Income Housing Coalition, who's joining us, who's going to talk about a national campaign that he's working on. So Secretary Dunlap, thank you so much for being with us today. And we would love to hear from you just an overview of deadlines and the voting process this year. And we have some questions already that I see that folks are asking about voting.
Okay, great. So it's all pretty simple. And it's simple for me, obviously, and just kind of like to stage that a little bit. I was a commercial cook for about 20 years, and we did a lot of catering work. And, you know, every weekend in the summertime, we'd be putting together a wedding reception. And we'd always have a little meeting with the staff the day before and say, okay, remember, if these people are as lucky as we hope they are, they'll never do this again. We do it every weekend, and they have no idea what to expect. So it's our job to make it easy for them. And the same is very true with elections. You know, we work on election stuff every single day. And yet for the voter, they may not think about it more than sometimes once every 4 years when they go to vote in the race for president. Although we have usually scheduled at least 1 or 2 elections per year. And then there's all kinds of town elections. So the whole process, if you're not dealing with it every day, can seem a little bit daunting and confusing, but it's actually quite simple. So the two components that I think Greg was most interested in when we talked earlier this last part of the summer was around voter registration and also around absentee balloting. These are the things that people are talking about most in this time of the coronavirus. So the upshot of it's pretty simple. And you've seen a lot of court stuff. In fact, we're anxiously awaiting a Supreme Court decision today around the use of deadlines for petitioning. So that really only has bearing on us because we're going to print ballots this afternoon. So hopefully the Supreme Court will show some white smoke somewhere along the line so we know exactly which direction we should be going in. So, but for the voter, you know, if you've never participated in this process, the door is thrown wide open to you. So, you know, we do have a few requirements that when you register to vote, it's the only right you have that you have to sign up for. So you have to bring something that identifies you, and you have to bring something that shows where you live. And that can be a little bit interesting for a lot of folks because people tend to, you know, we have a lot of transient people who move a lot. Just to give you a quick story about that, and I told Greg this earlier, you know, I had a state representative contact me about 3 months after the 2018 election and was very concerned that the voter file may be completely inaccurate because they had done a constituent mailing using their copy of the voter file, which is perfectly legal, about all the services that you can get from your legislators. About 750 pieces of mail came back as undeliverable. So I said, well, bring them into me, a big recyclable grocery bag filled with return mail. And I took them in handfuls and started matching up addresses against what we had in the central voter registration system. And what we found was about a 100% match, which I said to the representative, I said, the problem isn't that the file's inaccurate. The problem is that your constituents move a lot. You know, there's in one of our cities where there's a lot of apartments and people's circumstances will change rather rapidly. And they may stay with somebody for a couple of months. They may, you know, get married. They may get a job in another community. And that's life, really. And so, you know, and the registration system reflects that. So your registration reflects where you intend to go for the foreseeable future. So, and that can include for people in very strange circumstances right now with evictions now starting to tick up. People may find themselves couch surfing in some really strange circumstances, even staying under a bridge or living in a park. And our registration system accounts for that under the section of under the voter registration law around non-traditional addresses, that you cannot be denied the right to register because you don't have a traditional address. And it includes language around living under a bridge or in a park. So, but let's assume you actually do have a place that you can get mail at. And so you would bring like a utility bill, a lease agreement, along with something that identifies you. It doesn't have to be a photo ID. It can be a birth certificate or some other official document. If you have a driver's license that has everything on one document, that's all you need. And you fill out a simple card that states your name, your date of birth, your address. You can choose a party affiliation. You provide a driver's license number or the last 4 digits of a social security number. And then that's all entered into the database. Now, let's just say that you show up on election night, because we have election day registration, which is a great tool for the voter. So you show up at 5 minutes of 8 and you don't have anything. You can still register to vote, and you can get a ballot. It's marked as a challenge ballot. It's given a secret number, which if it comes up in a recount, the registrar will do their due diligence after the election to make sure that you can complete your registration. And that can be sped up a little bit if there's a recount, that vote hinges on the outcome of the recount. But the voter's never denied their right to vote. So registration is very simple. Let's just say, for the sake of argument, that you apply for an absentee ballot and you're not registered to vote. Well, there's a presumption of eligibility that you can still get an absentee ballot by applying, even if you're not registered to vote, if you swear that you actually live in that community. So again, it's all sort of set up to err on the side of the voter. The absentee ballot process is also very simple. We have almost endless ways for people to get an absentee ballot. You can call a town clerk. You can get online with our absentee ballot request service. You can print off the application, or you can get one at City Hall and fill it out. You can designate a third party, a family member or some other person, to get your ballot to you and take it back. All ballots have to be in the possession of the clerk by 8 p.m. on election night. So we opened up the absentee ballot request service on August 15th. So far, we have close to 200,000 people have already applied for absentee ballots. As where we're sitting right now is about 155,000 at the middle of the week, with about 300 an hour being added in. So we're seeing an exponential increase in the use of the absentee ballot. Again, just for comparison's sake, in 2016, the last presidential cycle, using the absentee ballot request service, we issued just under 42,000 ballots and about 140 the first day that were processed. This year, the first hour, we processed about 2,000 absentee ballot applications and 20,000 the first day. So we're looking at some record numbers, probably as many as somewhere between 500 and 700,000 absentee ballots that will be sent out to voters this election cycle. You can get it in the mail, you can mail it back, you can take it back in person. A lot of communities are setting up drop boxes in city halls so that people who are afraid that the Postal Service may not return their ballot in time can drop it off in person or have their designated third party do it. So that's really the mechanics of the process. Once you actually do it, it'll seem incredibly simple if you've never done it before. It's really a matter of, if you're already registered, we're encouraging people to register early, not wait until election day, even though we have election day registration. We will have walk-in polling stations open on election day. But as we did in July, we're strongly encouraging people to vote by absentee so that they can avoid crowds on election day, especially with the coronavirus pandemic. So that's the quick overview, and I'd like to, don't want to trespass too much on the rest of your time, and I'll take any questions that you might have.
And Secretary Dunlap, I just wanted to thank you too for your help in getting this poster put together that we shared with our colleagues earlier today. I'm going to bring that up just so that you can. So the Secretary's office helped in getting this poster put together with information, including what the Secretary just outlined for everybody. And you got the email this morning. We're going to follow up tomorrow with more information about this. But as we go to questions, something on this I just wanted to call out for the Secretary, maybe you could answer is, with all the concern about the Postal Service, what is the guide you're giving to people on when they should put absentee ballots in the mail if that's the way they're choosing to return their absentee ballots?
Well, the guidance that we got for the United States Postal Service was that people should request their absentee ballot no later than 15 days before the election, and they should get them in the mail if they're planning on returning them by mail no later than 7 days before the election, which would be October 27th. If your absentee ballot shows up like on the 30th or the 31st, your best bet is to try to return it in person or by using a drop box. If you're out of state and it shows up late, then we would strongly encourage you to use express mail, even overnight it if possible. And I know that's a bit expensive, but that's probably the best bet to get it in, because it does have to be in the possession of the clerk by 8 p.m. One of the things we've talked about with the governor's office, with all the furor around postal service cutbacks and delays in delivery of mail, is, there's been the suggestion about doing a postmark deadline as long as it's postmarked by election day. And the governor was, given the fact that we had very, very few stranded ballots in the primary, is held off on that for now. So for now, people have to understand that they've got to get that ballot back in the possession of the clerk by 8 p.m. on election day. I see that in the chat. One of the questions that came up, and I think I hopefully already addressed it, was how can homeless people vote with no address? And that gets into the provision of law that allows for a non-traditional address. And people can get some assistance from a homeless shelter in doing that. And certainly our office will also help with the registrar in terms of making those determinations about someone's address. And we have people on the phones in the Division of Elections from 7 in the morning on election day to about 11 o'clock at night, just to help resolve some of these issues. The other question that's out there is, are poll workers still needed to help with lines, and how can someone work at the polls? Well, yes, they do need help. And this was something that was a major consideration as we got into the primary. And we spent a lot of time, by the way, after the governor declared the state of civil emergency back in March, trying to figure out, how do you run a statewide election in the middle of a global pandemic when people are told to stay home? And the mechanisms we put in place were actually relatively simple. We delayed the election by about 5 weeks. We encouraged absentee balloting. We got personal protective equipment for all poll workers. We got a line on pens, things to mark ballots with. We spent about $20,000 on about 250,000 pens. And the idea being, cutting the Gordian knot, as it were, that the voter showing up, checking in person, would be handed their ballot and a pen. They'd mark their ballot and they just take the pen with them or drop it in a box on the way out. And you don't have to have poll workers there sanitizing pens. So that all worked out really well. And, we saw no real spike in infections after the election. We had, probably about almost 30% turnout. 60% of that was by absentee, but still a fair number of people. So what that shows us is that the coronavirus, look at the wedding in Millinocket, has been like a wildfire. If you don't take those precautions, that's what you get. But it's pretty easy to defeat with a mask and some social distancing and some hand sanitizer. So, but the poll worker issue was one that, something that a lot of towns were really mortally concerned about, because poll workers tend to come from the demographic of people who are retired. And that's the very demographic you don't want to have in a crowded room. And, we encourage people to volunteer, and a lot of people did step up. Every time I spoke about it, people said, well, can I volunteer? It's like, absolutely, call your town clerk. And, we had a lot of people step up, and what we find, and we've already heard it, that once people do that, they really feel like they're giving something back to their democracy, and they keep doing it. So that's why you have poll workers that do this for 40 or 50 years, is because they really feel like they're doing something important. And in Portland, they had a shortage of almost 140 poll workers. And when the word went out, they had almost too many volunteering. So that's still an issue. And I think if people feel like that's something they can take some time to do, your clerks will welcome it. And I would encourage people to talk to their town clerks. Maybe another question.
I think there's just one final question about the Postal Service ability to deliver ballots in a timely way.
It's something that bears watching, for sure. We had a conference call with the Postal Service and the United States Elections Assistance Commission there a few weeks ago with a bunch of other secretaries of state. And they were minimizing, what they thought the risks were. None of us were terribly convinced. And so we are concerned about this, and not because of the politics around the president and his rhetoric. I mean, who knows what he's going to say next? We can't really concern ourselves with that. But the cutbacks to the Postal Service are concerning. We did have ballots that were sent to towns well in advance of the 30-day mail-out deadline to get absentee ballots back in June. Some towns, including the city of Bangor, got their ballots a couple of days late. and we'd send them a week in advance. So that's something that people should bear in mind, is that, and we're holding the Postal Service to their word. If they say that it can be delivered, if you get in the mail by 7 days before the election, we're holding them to that. But I would really strongly encourage people, if you are using the Postal Service to deliver your ballot, just take that extra time and don't wait until the last few days.
Secretary Dunlap, thank you so much for your time today. We will pass on along any other questions and can share back if folks have other questions for the Secretary. But thank you for your time, and we recognize, folks, that we're just over time right now. But before we go, we wanted to just invite Joey Lindstrom from the National Low Income Housing Coalition to tell us a little bit. Joey's the field director for the National Low Income Housing Coalition, and currently coordinating a project called Our Homes, Our Votes, which is a national campaign around voter engagement. And Joey, if you could just briefly share with us kind of an overview of that campaign, we'd appreciate it.
Before Joey gets on, I'm going to leave. I have to go change a topic.
Okay. Of course. Yeah, thank you so much.
Secretary, thank you for all your work. We really appreciate the work that you do on this issue. It feels good to have somebody so committed to these issues running the show in Maine. Thank you.
Thank you for your help in getting people out to vote. We appreciate it.
Thanks.
So thank you for introducing me and giving this opportunity to present briefly on Our Homes, Our Votes. How briefly are we talking here?
We have just a few minutes.
Okay.
We are over time. If folks can hang on there, we would love to just hear a brief summary of the campaign, Joey. Thank you.
I will give you a brief summary of the campaign. I do have some slides, and honestly, I think I can do them in 3 minutes. So the Our Homes, Our Votes effort for the National Low Income Housing Coalition is something that we've been working on for many years. It is a rebranded effort of something that we worked on previously called voterization. It's something that we do focusing on encouraging housing organizations to register low-income renters, educate them about being a strong voter, and then mobilizing them to make sure their ballots get in. We do this for some obvious reasons. As you can see on the chart here, renters vote at much lower rates than homeowners, and this proves consistently throughout elections. And that disparity is even greater when you look at it by household income. Households with incomes under 20,000 vote at much lower rates than households above 100,000. We do this to address housing needs through policy change. We know that 83% of the public agrees that elected officials don't pay enough attention to housing, and that 76% are more likely to vote for a candidate who has a plan for making housing more affordable. So we've been organizing housing organizations throughout the country who have been doing election work, and one of the projects we've been working on is the Housing Providers Council, where we are encouraging actual housing providers, nonprofit, for-profit PHAs, to connect with one another about their voter engagement efforts. One of the things that housing providers can get out of being a part of this is a list of registered voters by property. So if you give us your property addresses, we can return to you the people who are registered to vote at that property and so forth. We're also providing assistance with branded materials and templates, and amplifying efforts of state and local organizations throughout the country through our Twitter handle, our Tenant Talk publication, and others. Here's an example of a template material, a poster that includes some important messaging on polling locations, open from and to, and we have and will have several more examples of this that can be easily co-branded. In addition, we've got some working groups for some of the Our Homes, Our Votes affiliates and for the Housing Providers Council participants. We're also maintaining state-by-state pages on our website. As you see on the right there, there is a page for Maine that talks about the registration deadline, the polling times, ID needed for voting. If you actually go to this website, you'll also see, how people vote when they are homeless, when they don't have an address. And then that is our support map, and you'll see that Tori Beret is the organizer for Maine. You should feel free to contact me or contact her. I think I hit my 3-minute mark. How did I do there?
That was probably the fastest time you've ever gone through those, but thank you very much. And Joey, perhaps if you would be willing to share your slides, we could share those out with everyone so they could take a little more time to take a look at them.
Sounds great. Would love to have any of you involved.
Yeah, Joey, we lost a little time there when, the speaker was with us a little longer than expected, and that backed everything up. Thank you for going through those so quick. What we are gonna tomorrow follow up with a link to this, to the video from this call, as well as your materials and some other materials. So we'll make sure that people have it. But I gather one of the things you wanted people to know was that this national network is happening now, and that if there are groups in Maine that want to be a part of that, they're going to get this link when we send it out tomorrow to sign up and be part of that.
I think that's definitely the right way to think of it. I think in previous years we put out some tools and did some webinars, and we kind of hoped people were using those tools and webinars. But this is the first year that we're really trying to get a sense of who's participating and how we can support their efforts.
Great. Joey, thank you so much.
Thank you.
And for folks on the meeting, thanks for staying with us a little bit past 10 o'clock, and we appreciate your doing that. And just before we sign off, I wanted to share that as folks know, we've said before, the next time we will likely gather would be for our conference, our housing policy conference, which we usually do right after the election. This year, the board is planning to set the conference for sometime in early December to leave a little more time after the election to be able to share feedback and an update from the election. So look for some more information about the conference in the coming weeks. It will be a virtual conference, and we will be sharing more. And Greg, were there any other announcements that you wanted to make before we sign off today?
No, I don't. I think the only item that comes to mind I just want to call out is that one of the things we didn't talk about today because of time was our eviction database project, which is another project we launched this summer, and we have about 1,600 eviction files we've poured through and have into this database now. We are going to release our initial report on that next week. And so just be on the lookout for more information. We just didn't have time to fit that into today's call.
Great, thank you. All right, thanks everyone for joining us today, and take care and be safe.
Thanks.